Welcome back to the Golf Industry Show 2019 here in the beautiful city of San Diego, California. This is the GCSAA TV live stage brought to you by Lebanon Turf, and I am joined by an old pal of mine, Professor Eric Irvin, now at the University of Delaware, but the story is he's sitting in for his better half, Stacy Kingsbury of Kingsbury Consulting, and all of this is a way of introducing us for the next two 15-minute segments on best management practices, Eric. So thanks for filling in.
No problem.
Appreciate you doing that for your bride, and hopefully she's feeling better watching this live on TV.
Talked to her this morning.
Great.
She's feeling a lot better.
Great, glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about, it's an interesting thing because our experiences are shared actually through Stacy.
Yes.
It was your experience in setting up the Virginia Best Management Practices, the booklet that you created with Virginia Tech and the Virginia Golf Course Superintendents, and your use of Stacy in that role that led us to hire Stacy and take that version with our adaptations online. So let's start from the beginning in some ways.
Sure.
You got to play a role as an academic, much like I got to play in a technical role, but a lot of the success of this comes from superintendent leadership. So why don't we start there? How important was that superintendent leadership that you had in doing your BMPs?
Well, it's absolutely essential. I mean, Peter McDonough, he's had the idea. He said, let's get in front of any Chesapeake Bay type of nutrient management regulations, hotspot of that. And, he was the leader with the idea, as I said. He's always been connected to our state legislators. So
that's a critical component too, is having superintendents that are going to be willing to interact with their legislators. And of course, GCSAA's got the grassroots ambassador program as well to teach them better ways of doing that. So what was your role?
My role after Peter, created the groundswell, got the Virginia Golf Course superintendents on board to do this project in a proactive manner. Got a whole committee of golf course superintendents together, raised the funds through research golf tournaments, membership dues, so on and so forth, started their own fundraising golf tournament just for Virginia and turf
BMPs.
grass and the environment. So after that, they came to us as Virginia Tech and as the academic experts and says, can you partner with us? And I said, sure, but what do I got to work with? At Virginia Tech, I didn't have an extension appointment at that time. Mike Goatley, our turf grass extension specialist, was full on covered up at the time with upcoming nutrient management planning regulations by the state of Virginia. So he was putting together his own booklet, his own certification program. Every golf course in the state of Virginia was going to have a nutrient management plan by 2017. This was 2010 at the time, so we had time to work on it, but he was full on dedicated to that. So
you figure out they're going to get you to do it, so your first move is to ask your wife for help.
That's right. So she had just been coming out of a full-time job with a company that worked for the federal government, Department of Defense grants to
technical documents.
Technical documents on how to clean up, how to find unexploded ordnance on foreign military sites, clean it up, and go forward.
And before that, I think she had a stint with the Connecticut Department of Environmental Conservation, yes?
That's right. Her first job out of college was as a water quality specialist for Connecticut.
So you have somebody with technical expertise, who knows how to manage a project, technical documentation, water quality issues. So I keep saying, what I like to say is, from my perspective, that's the reason we wound up being successful, was having this person managing the efforts moving forward. I think with the way the GCSAA is doing it now, a lot of that's falling on superintendents, to have to manage it. But I would say some of the success you get is by having that person managing the process, wouldn't you say?
So her whole background was, first in water quality and then project management for other environmental type of issues. And so it's essential, the superintendents have full-time jobs, professors have full-time jobs, we're all volunteering in this effort. It's essential to put a little bit of your money towards hiring a project manager to make sure that day to day,
Right.
everything keeps moving forward in a quality manner.
That's right. Okay, so now you realize your best management practices, we realize our best management practices, and we start to, you a little bit longer than me, have had them in place, and now we're to the implementation phase, right? So
Yep.
let's start to transition our discussion to that implementation phase. One of the things I like that you did was you got a grant to look at monitoring water around golf courses that were using best management practices to see and answer the simple question: is the water that's coming in cleaner or not cleaner moving out?
That's right.
So let's talk about your sort of validation of some of these issues through that process.
Yep, so we had to find multiple grants to fund one PhD student to do this as her project. So it was a Virginia Golf Course Superintendent's funding, it was the Virginia Agricultural Council, which is, and then it was the Environmental Institute for Golf.
Right.
So we put all those sources together and we're able to fund a 3-year project with a PhD student, looking at the water quality coming in and going out of 8 different golf courses
8 different golf
in the
courses.
James River watershed from Charlottesville down to Richmond to Virginia Beach.
Excellent.
One of the sub-watersheds for the Chesapeake Bay.
And you know, this is no easy task to sample water that you're trying to figure out where it's coming from, what's influencing, because this is surface water you're doing,
Surface
right?
water.
You're just pulling streams.
Streams, that's
Okay.
it. Yeah.
So was there something about these 8 golf courses worth noting? Were they different in locale, how water moved through, management stuff?
Oh boy. No, mostly it was, these were the superintendents who were bought into this project and volunteered their courses. Hey, I'm in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, I have streams moving through my golf course.
And I'd like to know if my management practices are best.
That's right.
So that's great that you had people step up to do that. So in simple terms, how long did you sample?
3 straight years.
And they're doing their business while you're doing your sampling.
They're doing their business. We're sampling any stream moving into the course, and sometimes there's multiple streams, multiple ins to one out, so we had to sample those things. Sometimes we had to go underground into the sewer to find the stream. Very interesting in certain cities, right?
Okay, that's right, because golf courses are in urban environments, and if we want to see our impact, sometimes you have to do that, but now that's not because it was moving through the ground, it's because it was piped under the ground.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so simple, what did we find? What are we finding of how maybe golf courses are impacting the water quality coming through?
Right, so to break it down in pretty simple terms, if you remember anything about nitrate levels and drinking water standards, that's 10 parts per million.
Right?
But to the standard that's not necessarily a standard in the literature, but a lot of people use, is if a stream might become impaired.
Right. And
we
that's a
want to
little bit of
see
the life of it too, right?
The life of it, the macroinvertebrates in there, the fish, so on and so forth. We want something between 1 and 5 parts per million. So many times, so it gets a little bit more stringent. So a number of times we would see something coming in that was slightly higher than the 5 or the 10 that we wanted.
Right.
Many times it would be unchanged moving out.
Right.
Many times it would be less. Sometimes there were a couple of courses where it was a little bit higher. But overall, over the 3 years, visiting each course 4 times a year to sample. Remember, the campus is 3 to 5 hours away from all these golf courses. That's a little bit of a disadvantage, so it's hard to get there all the time. Overall, statistically, we couldn't find any trends towards the water was worse coming out in terms of nitrogen and phosphorus levels than it was coming in.
Right, okay, so as we wrap up this first segment, let's just move towards the BMPs playing a role in confirming our suspicions. Now, it's not a clean slate, but you know, that maybe there were some impairments coming out. The standards are tighter in these particular cases. But overall, these golf courses that have these sensitive waters around them are taking steps to try to deal with not impairing them. If you had to talk about some of the management differences, can you speak to a little bit about the sort of BMPs these guys were using and what you thought to be most useful to them?
Sure.
And from, I guess we're talking about nitrates, so let's talk about nitrates.
Well, nitrate, well, of course, every one of the golf courses was soil testing, had a nutrient management plan that they were following.
So that was required by then?
Required, well, not yet, but all of these folks had stepped up who were participating to already be part of it.
We would call nutrient management plans the gold standard in some ways of the way you'd set up a fertility plan, right? Because it's based on testing, it's based on history, it's based on performance. A good, efficient way to do it. Would you give most people a tip to say that's a good BMP for managing nutrients, developing a plan from the beginning?
It's a standard BMP, sure. Yeah.
But most people really, are they writing out nutrient management plans in formal ways in your experience?
Well, maybe not in a formal way, but every winter they're looking at how did our fertilization plan work last year.
Right.
Okay, what are our soil tests telling us?
Right.
So they were doing it in a less everybody almost was doing it in a less formal way.
Right, but to me, a nutrient management plan is going to have this, what do you think's happen on this side of it? Right, okay, here's what I need to get the performance. But I'm setting up a plan, and these things are required, right?
Yeah.
These things are required because you want to keep things out of the water.
Right.
So are these plans, these management plans that they're now required to do they have some component of making sure that it's not moving out?
There really isn't. There isn't a requirement to sample your streams. That's still voluntary.
So presumably the nitrogen that's in those plans is justified primarily for performance.
For performance and turf health.
Right.
But a big component of reducing nutrient movement into any body of water is having lots of turf health to slow down the movement of any water moving out, no open area for any sediment to move. So one of the big BMPs that all the streams had was lots of unmowed area, buffer areas around them, or if it was mowed because of play, it was mowed much, 3 to 4 inches, or maybe it's only mowed at 6 inches every other month, things like that.
But enough to impede movement off the site.
Exactly.
Well, we're just getting started here on this conversation, Eric. We're already 15 minutes through.
Hey, that went fast.
How about that? So we'll take a break here at the Golf Industry Show in San Diego. We're here in 2019 at the Golf Industry Show. This is GCSAA TV Live, presented to you by Lebanon Turf. I'm Frank Rossi with my pal Eric Irvin, talking BMPs. We'll be right back.